All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of the Takedown Breakdown here on the SHIPIT Nation YouTube station. Got my guy Nades here with me as always. Going to break down all things from the Week 8 main slate over on DraftKings, talk about the winners, go break down some of the player pools. Got some really good lineup reviews to do today. A lot of people chimed in, so appreciate that. And I pulled up some of the best, so I'll go through those. If you're here live, we appreciate it. If you're here live or if you're watching it on playback, hit the like button down at the bottom. It's the thumbs up. Just tap that and then go to make sure you're subscribed. We're almost at 9,000 subscribers. And when we get there, we're going to do a huge giveaway. So Nades, bring you in, man. We'll get the perfect lineup up and rolling. But first thoughts, just jumping into it for the takedown breakdown for Week 8.
Yeah, tough Week 8 for me, but the nation did good, and that's the glory of the game, right? That's why we do these. That's why we have a community, and we build a community up and help people in the Discord. Because hey, if it's not myself, I'm cheering for anybody else on the staff or any of the members in there. So, and hey, Week 8's not done yet. There's still 300K up top tonight. Got close in Showdown last night, but that's all right. I think there's a lot of lessons we can kind of pull out of some of these things and these lineups that we review here. And overall, I mean, tough Week 8. It's just tough to put it all together. But yeah, looking forward to breaking it down here.
Yeah, shout out to all the regulars. And as Kenny says, we're back on the grind, boys. So this is what it is. We'll bring up the perfect lineup and start there. That'll sort of help us shape out how we talk about the slate. Obviously, Jalen Hurts back to taking every 1-yard touchdown to the house. I think he took over as the second all-time rush TD scorer in the Eagles' history. Yesterday, he tied it and then overtook the lead for second place there. HN, no Tyreek Hill. We'll get to that. Obviously, he was a very popular option and play yesterday. Jacobs instead of the Love side of things. Ridley with no Hopkins there any longer. Tillman was the guy, still keeps it rolling. Almost won me, had a chance to get up there in the millie last week. Comes back and does it again. Another great outing from him. Lad McDonkey Chalk, Mr. McConkey got the job done, so he was not Donkey Chalk. He ended up getting there, results-wise at least. Cade Otton, talked about that a ton on the show yesterday. The highest by far I've ever seen optimal in our stuff over at SHIPIT Nation on the Stone. And he made people pay that wanted to fade that. James Cook, a way to get a piece of that game. And if you weren't on the Detroit Lions game, well, the Lions had the biggest team total, and they came through in the first half, by the way, covering their team total for the day and had a huge total on the slate. The Lions D, though, getting the job done in this optimal. 48-2 nades, 254 points. And I should note, 211.66 to win the $20 Millie Maker. Take it away.
Yeah, so first thing, the on-chain play, I know a lot of us were on that. That's kind of direct leverage right there in that same game. I mean, I know you pulled up the tidbits, you pulled up the stats, right, of when Tua is in there. On-chain actually has averaged, 24 DraftKings points, something like that. So he pretty much basically hit his average, right, when Tua is under center, which is absolutely crazy to see there. The James Cook play at 7K. You could have got there. The reason being is who else was 7K that you could have played there? Tyreek Hill. I know a lot of people combo packed, right? On-chain and Tyreek Hill because they were underpriced for Tua under center in that game environment. But I mean, if you play Tyreek Hill, you probably still win the millie with a lineup like this. But I think the overall lesson there is just leverage there in that game that no one's going to. And hey, Seattle, you can always play running backs against Seattle, right? So I think that makes some sense. The Cade Otton play, best play on the slate by far. That's why he was 40% owned. People were trying to argue it. I mean, if they just watched the game last week, when Godwin got hurt, when Evans got hurt, every single play Baker looked right at Cade Otton. Threw him the ball every single time. Now he's 3,500. I mean, he should have been 65, 7K, and people still would have played him in this spot. So people can argue that play all they want. Like you said, the optimal for a tight end to be 25% of optimal simulations on our stuff over there. You just don't see that from the tight end position. Lad McConkey flop leg, right, in that game, right? McDonkey chalk last week. McConkey did get there late with the big bomb. He was having a good game, but still – I think the overall arching theme of this is everybody, a lot of people were paying up at some of those receiver spots, right, or full punting, and kind of living in that mid tier, and then spending some salary more on the running backs, I think is interesting here. And then the Jalen Hurts tush push. I mean, 3 1-yard touchdowns. Rest in peace to Saquon Barkley owners, right? He ate all their lunch there, but I mean, I still think you can pull some plays out of here, like you said, right? The leverage off the love stacks and the passing stacks in that Jacksonville game, where with Josh Jacobs also middled in between a lot of that running back chalk right there too, is always a good way to play it.
Yeah, and I think Go Collect was talking about here too. Cook was actually in a great matchup. If you look at it, I think there was some late swap eligibility there too, if you went and looked at it. But it was a D+ was the Seahawks rush defense, and there was an opportunity for that game in the afternoon to have some back and forth. I know there was weather involved as well. I think anybody that was in that range was mostly going up to Kenneth Walker, but a lot of guys were on J.K. Dobbins at 6,900 in that same time slot. For $100 more, you could get over to James Cook. A lot of guys were on, myself included, on the Javonte Williams at 6K. You could have went up 1,000, and then you would have to take the Broncos D down $1,000 to make the Javonte Broncos combo. I'm just trying to see in the afternoon. I guess it would have been probably the Bears D, hoping that comes back. You still would have got 34 points out of the swap to James Cook, Bears D, versus playing the Broncos D and Javonte Williams. That would have been a huge boost.
Well, it would have been J.K. Dobbins, right? It would have been J.K. Dobbins right there in the flex at 6,900. You could have swapped to James Cook, right?
That's what I say. If you had the $100, but the exact swap I know many were looking for, and I referenced it on the show yesterday, was many would have been sitting on Javonte Williams and Broncos D. That was a super popular pairing that if you didn't have the nuts out of the morning, you were probably thinking about how you had to swap. So that would have been a swap there that you could have got to get over to James Cook, and I thought that was somewhat interesting. Calvin Ridley, another guy, just went back and looked at the stone, popped. Josh Jacobs popped. We talked about if you're not playing Tyreek to be on Achane. So a lot of this made sense. Tillman, Otten was just through the roof. Obviously, if you didn't land on the common defenses there, you could get to the Lions. So the other point you made is if you did play Tyreek here, I thought Achane and Tyreek were fine together yesterday, even if you weren't on Tua, and you still would have got 13 points. You still would have won the millie with having him there. So just an example where you can still get away with certain things as long as you have some of these other outliers. And then lastly, the stuff with Achane being back with Tua, the exact average over the 8-game sample or 9-game sample size was 26.8. And he hit 26.7 DK points. So just goes to show it's pretty set up there. That's how they get down when he's back in there. So I think that's it.
He got vultured too by Mostert twice, right? So
yeah. He had other opportunities. I'm going to talk about that. There's actually a lineup review we're going to do that shows both of those. One quick thing, just while we're here, obviously going through it with you guys quick. If you haven't yet got involved, get over to ShipItNation.com. If you're wanting to get in, now is the time. That $85 a month will go away soon. And it's $99 a month. It's not like it's expensive when we go back to regular price, but this is including NFL Showdown and Maine, college football, PGA Showdown and Maine has a week off, but NBA is back for Showdown and Maine. NHL's in full swing, MMA full swing, NASCAR full swing, and then we still have MLB Showdown to round out the World Series, but that is the best deal by far in the industry. If you're not going to join, that's fine. It's not for everybody, but go here and get the email course. At least the number one lesson starts on talking about reviewing your lineups. I know a lot of people yesterday were wondering, certain things with Showdown and Main State on how people got to certain builds. A lot of it is just going back, reviewing, analyzing your process, and checking it out. Real quick, I want to do this exercise this week, Nate, just to go back to the stone. We haven't done this yet, so I kind of spring it on you, but just some of the stuff as we go through, and then we'll go through the Millie Maker winners. But we saw Tillman have another really good week as a cheap option. Really popped in the optimal still, almost 8% of the time, had a good projection, as good as Elijah Moore, not that far behind Jerry Jeudy. So he was an option. Obviously, Njoku had a big day. He was popping quite a bit there. He was another one that I saw. Derrick Henry was down versus a lot of the running backs, and he did not end up coming through or was not needed for a week for once. Calvin Ridley, another guy. If you see any more, just let me know. But Calvin Ridley was another guy. Decent projection in here and ceiling compared to some of the other options there. So I thought that was
Gibbs right there in the same game.
Gibbs was another one. He was a positive average.
Yeah, with that secondary stack, that would have been nice, right? I mean, 5,200, 7,400, which is a direct pivot right off of Breece Hall, right? And I mean, it's right there highlighted in blue on the stone. And obviously people can see, right, oh, this is results oriented. I mean, this hasn't been updated since yesterday. And not every player is highlighted, right? There's reasons these players are highlighted and not. And I mean, we're just trying to do the best we can to break down the tools and show how some of these lineups, even the perfect lineup, right, that scored 50 points more or 40 points more than what was needed to win the biggest tournament on DraftKings yesterday, how you could have got there.
Yeah, I think, Mixon was pretty obvious. We knew that one going into yesterday. He had the ownership, though, to go with it. But just another note like this, if you were setting up, we said this was a pretty easy stack. It wasn't that they were super optimal, but if you were getting this game as a way to get different, Josh Jacobs was, 6,600 over here. Really good projection, strong ceiling, still showing pretty optimal. And then Lawrence, Brian Thomas, Evan Ingram. Like I saw some of those stacks up there in the winning tournaments that we saw, and we're going to get to some of them here shortly. This was another super interesting one. You look at this, purple is the target. Kyler, Marvin, McBride, and then we know HN was by far the biggest positive leverage that we had over there. That would have been a nice setup. I believe that actually did well. Let me just see if I can find it here. I think it was in the 333 Wildcat. That might have won it, actually. Was a Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride with an HN, and then fill in the pieces. But just to see those things as you're looking for them, the purple is a target game. You go down there and find it. That's a way you can do it. The blue is high upside. We want big upside in these tournaments. Ceilings, those guys all big ceilings. And then HN would have been a pivot off of leverage within its own team to go to use the running back spot. Even though he had ownership, it was not as much as Tyreek. And instead of Tyreek at $7K, you use the $6,800 Marvin Harrison on the opposite side, who had a big day. So that was just another thing to look at there. Breece Hall, I want to talk about him for a second. I think you mentioned him a little bit in the preview, or maybe it was pre-show, but just noting that he was a guy that had huge positive leverage, just a horrible outcome of results. I think they had 2 or 3 one-yard touchdowns. And
Braylon Allen took one, right? Just miserable run out there. I know people were tilting in the Discord, and it's annoying, right? But your point, right? He still got his opportunities and then just didn't cash in, and then that's when you see the vultures come in. Obviously, it happened with HN. It happened all day, right? It happens all these. At least they get their opportunities. It's just that's the nature of the game, right? Sometimes the run out just doesn't go your way. And that's just the variance that's involved, which is unfortunate, but he definitely had his opportunities to get there. He was definitely a great play, hence the ownership, hence the spot. I mean, you look at the rush defense right there, C+, right? Not great, not horrible, but not good for sure. So
one thing I want to go back and talk about too, just because people sometimes wonder this, we also put the stack ranking, which is from our stack rankings, and it's not just who's the best stack, because obviously when sites do that, oftentimes you'll see it's the Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, and Devontae Smith, because they all project for a high trio. But really, that's not as valuable as, let's say, like a Burrow, Chase, Yoshivas, once Higgins is ruled out. Even though it costs less, their point per dollar, it factors a lot more in. So even though this is not the highest optimal rates you're going to find on the slate, when you combine it with the stack ranking, this is where something like a Winston, Cedric Tillman, and Njoku becomes valuable. You may have got it wrong by the run back and stuff. I'm just saying to incorporate and put it all together. That's what we're trying to show off, and ways that you can do it with the Jags. Not far behind. You get to Lawrence and that. The Cardinals, not that far behind, 7.25. They were still a high end. They were on the opposite side, and you actually had pretty good spots in there with Marvin Harrison, Kyler Murray, and Trey McBride. So just got to look at some of the other factors that you can use.
That Lawrence stack, actually, that Lawrence setup that you just went through, that's what won the Wildcat. Lawrence, Thomas, Ingram, right there, all highlighted in blue, all low owned, with Josh Jacobs on the run back. 6%, 8%, 7%, and 11%. And you can just play whatever chalk you want around it.
And this is what we were talking about with Cade Otton. Even though we knew he was going to be way up there in ownership and maybe higher in the high stakes, of course, we still had him just as a knockout play. So I warned everybody yesterday, don't complain if this guy gets there and gets the job done. This is stuff this is where I talk about it all the time, but you can almost ignore some of this when it's, something like a onesie tight end position at 3,500. You could play 2 tight ends if you wanted to. Obviously, yesterday, National Tight End Day. I made the joke. If it was also National American Beer Day. If you had a drinking game surrounding playing that with every time Scott Hanson said National Tight End Day on the Red Zone channel, you probably got alcohol poisoning, because it was talked about nonstop throughout the day, the most tight end scoring of all time, I believe, on a Sunday slate. But this was just another one to show it off. A high stack rank: Cousins, Mooney, Pitts. Notice not London. It's actually Mooney that's showing up there in the high upside. And then if you went with, once you do that, look here, 3%, 5%, 1%, a great stack ranking, a healthy team total, a good spot. It's a chalky game, but it's only chalky in so many places. Once you put in the 1%er, the 1%er, and the 1%er, the 5%er, and the 3%er, even though Pitt's got up there a little bit, you can definitely go to a second tight end and plug in the highest option there if you wanted, or you can get away with other things. So just little ways to look at it. We're not going to go through every single thing here, Nades, but I just think showing that off is a little bit interesting for people to see. Obviously, if you want to get in, like we talked about, just go over to the site, hit the banner. It's $85. You get an entire month to check us out. You can try the education courses. You can use Shiptimizer, our optimizer for NFL Classic and Showdown slates. You can go in, check out all the content starting tonight for Showdown. But let's get to this first Millie Maker winner. And we'll talk about a couple of the guys up here. Nickelback for life, certainly a shout out to him. Hishbu, really good player, top of the line. We'll talk about him. But let's start with Rick, 12324. I saw he posted it out on X, so shout out to Rick. Had a big week a couple weeks ago, I think it was, for like 20K, and now followed it up with the absolute ultimate shipper, the Millie Maker, up top, getting the job done for $1 million. Nades, here's the lineup. Give me your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, so I already hit on the James Cook play. I think that's a really good play, and then paired him with the Buffalo defense, right? The weather plays in there, but James Cook in this tournament, Breece Hall came in, I think, pushing 30%, give or take, at $300 more. And then, so he double leveraged the Breece Hall situation in this game. Granted, he did use Bijan with the K. Dotton to middle that ownership down a little bit, right? 35%. And then he plays a 8% Bijan Robinson, who's $100 cheaper than Breece Hall, who's pushing 30%. And then double leverages the Breece Hall with the James Cook, right? So I think that's super sharp, that play right there. Now, whether he meant to do that or not, I'm assuming he probably had some sort of thought over Breece Hall there. The Ja'Marr Chase play, typically, like to your point, right, I'm playing Ja'Marr Chase with Joe Burrow. It just so happened that at 8,500, 20 was enough because the other wide receivers really didn't do much. So it was just the nature of the run out of the slate, right? But I mean, Tyreek Hill for $1,500 cheaper, right, is significantly better play in my opinion than a Ja'Marr Chase naked, right? Not even part of a game stack or anything. Could he do it? Yeah, but usually it's a Joe Burrow who's underpriced. Or not underpriced, but Joe Burrow who's going to sling the ball 40 times, right? Usually is going to come along with a guy like Ja'Marr Chase. The Lad McConkey, donkey chalk there, flop leg. You could have made sense, right? They're still down.
He actually wasn't even chalk in the $20 Millie Maker in the end of it all, too. That's the other thing.
Yeah, he was projected to be chalk, but it's also flop leg from last week, right? He was, 30-some% or something like that last week. And, I mean, you still have a D-plus pass defense for the Saints over if you go back to the Stone and check out the Saints. D-plus pass defense. He's 5,100, kind of in that mid-tier, right, of wide receivers where people were going up to the Ja'Marr Chases of the world or the Tyreek Hill, not really going in that mid-tier range, or they were going down to those Tampa Bay guys, right, the Cedric Tillmans, those kind of guys. That mid-tier really got forgotten about outside of Jalen Waddle, who also obviously is a pivot right there with Lad McConkey, right? Jalen Waddle, 5,400. Another thing, too, is no Miami pieces. I know Miami pieces, A-Chain got there and stuff, but Miami pieces were underpriced and hence the ownership going in. So just being able to say, screw it, I'm not going to fade that. Wasn't something I did yesterday. I wanted at least one of A-Chain or Tyreek Hill on all my teams personally. But he's got leverage built in. If Waddle doesn't get there, right? Maybe it's a guy in the same range with McConkey that outscores him. If Achane doesn't get there, maybe it's because the guy's slightly more expensive, right, that are also pivots off the other chalky guys get there. So I think overall there's a lot of plays in here, and you can get away with 35% on K. Dotton when you secondary stack it with a guy like Bijan. Bijan gets it done on the ground and middles that ownership down a lot. So I think you can pull some plays from here quite often. And then the Bo Nix play, right, 5,600. He could have went Justin Herbert, right, to pair with McConkey, but many people were trying to make Bo Nix work and play the roulette, right? But he's also a pivot. A naked Bo Nix is also a pivot off of Javonte Williams. And if Javonte Williams isn't getting there, maybe it's Bo Nix stealing his lunch on the ground, right, at 5,600. So $400 cheaper than Javonte. So I think there's a lot of good things you can pull from this.
Yeah, and Herbert costs them the millie, 24 points in second versus 29.76. So that's, one of those things. The other thing is you never know the rules that he's setting. Like we talked about this today with Showdown. People oftentimes just chalk it up and say, oh, it sucks. I did all this stuff right, but I didn't get there. Well, maybe you ruled yourself out. Like, let's say, for example, he was using a certain price point here. He wouldn't have got to it. Like if he's at 49.5 up to 50K, he's not going to get HN for Hubbard, even though regardless of him being a run back to Bo Nix and anything else, I think this is, I just think this is unnecessary, but it's not commenting like against his lineup. He obviously knows what he's doing. He's had success recently. It's not that. I'm saying others, I think, would look at this lineup and say, if there's no Miami piece, why not, if he's not playing Tyreek, why not throw in A-Chan and the Broncos D? And you got Bo Nix with the Broncos D for 7. It's only 2 points less there, but you pick up all those HN points. You didn't have Tyreek, you would have smashed even further. That's, ifs and buts. That's after the fact. You already won the millie. So again, congrats. It's just saying, you remember, if he was just getting Achane and leaving this defense, he may have had it set for 49.5 plus, and that lineup wouldn't work because that'd be leaving 600 on the table. So that just wouldn't go into his optimizer if he's using one. But just to note it, like that's kind of other little things that you do have to look at. The Chase thing is just another thing to harp on in general. Obviously, this week we had unlimited value, so I get it. You just land on the spot. There's no Higgins. Why not just play him as the value instead of somebody else? But it just proves the point. It doesn't prove the point that it can't be on the winner. I've never said that either. That's like a situational thing like this that I'll get to further to in a second. But it does prove the point that's like if Jamar has a slate-breaking game at 8,500, you want like 30, 30 plus probably in a milli maker. Again, didn't need it yesterday because of but again, I'll go to that in 1 second. But that's going to be a lot better with 30 for a guy. It's probably another touchdown. That really helps a guy like Burrow if he has another touchdown, extra yards, the bonus, all of that more lineups of Jamar and Burrow are going to shake out into these winning circles that you see. Now, the point I'm making is that even though he got there, it's just a slate with unlimited value. You needed the Bo Nix 30-pointer. You needed the James Cook 2% 31-pointer. You needed the Ladd McConkey 3% 32-pointer. You needed the back-to-back $3,300 Tillman to get to almost 30 points. And then you needed some other stuff just to go your way to make it enough to happen. You always need something. That's the obvious. I do this for a living. I'm not, just stating the obvious. I'm saying that that's the point of the Jamar Chase topic, where if he actually has a 30 to 35 pointer, it's probably Joe Burrow lineups that ended up finding their way to the top because all this stuff still got there in other way, shape, or form. A Burrow lineup with Achane, another cheap D that put up 16 or something could be there, and then one other drop down that you can find it somewhere else would have been in the mix to make it happen. So it's just little things like that you have to think about when you're building out. But this one got the job done. Congrats to Rick 12324. But let's talk about Nickelback for life. I think this is a really sharp player, good dude, and he crushed it here. He got the job done with 211.06, 100,000. I always wonder what the difference in that feeling is like. Coming in second, 900K short by 0.5. But talk to the people about his lineup, Nades. I think you like the setup of this one.
Yeah, I like the setup of this one, and we kind of just talked about it a little bit on the Stone, right? The Herbert stack with McConkey, D plus, attacking that D plus rating, right, for the Saints, and then on the flip side, the Chargers have an A for pass defense, but a B, right? Where if you're looking for a run back, is it going to be Chris Olave, Bob Means, Tipton, Scantling with freaking Spencer Rattler throwing the ball, or is it going to be Alvin Kamara, who is going to be heavily involved? So I like that run back there with the Herbert stacks. The Jahmyr Gibbs play, right? Again, all the same kind of points there. If you're not on any of that game, the Lions had the highest team total of the game yesterday, or of the slate yesterday. You really weren't stacking up the Jared Goff side and stuff like that. Attack with Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Who's also a pivot off of that. So I like that play. Jamar Chase, we already hit on that enough there. The Kate Otten kind of just filled. So overall, I like the setup here. I think the way he used two tight ends here was unique. I think a lot of people using two tight ends yesterday were, if they were spending up to that 6K range, they were going to a guy like probably Brock Bowers, right? So going on the other side of the Brock Bowers chalk. Not chalk, but I mean, Brock Bowers came in, he was projected to be 12 to 15, maybe even 20% owned. He came in obviously a little less than that, but you already knew Kelsey, $100 cheaper, going to be cheaper or going to be lower owned in a two tight end setup like you're building. So I thought that was good. And then the Houston defense, if I remember correctly, The Chargers defense were projected to be super chalky for $200 more expensive than that. And then it's also a pivot off of I know people were trying to go back to Anthony Richardson, Adonai Mitch, Josh Downs, that side of the game. So if you're not being on that side, you're not playing Joe Mixon because you're going to Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Going to Alvin Kamara. A lot of Houston D are going to be probably paired with Joe Mixon, who obviously would have scored more, and he probably would have won the Millie, right, with Joe Mixon in the Houston defense there. But overall, I just like the setup. I think he did it differently, and he just leveraged a lot of plays with still playing the good plays, right? The Jamar Chase, the Cedric Tillman, who's chalky, the Cade Otton. He built it around, obviously, a lot of low-owned plays, and that's hence the 91% ownership, right? So you can still play good plays and just build in leverage right around it is kind of what I liked with this setup.
Yeah, so 6 guys under 5% in this lineup, right? And even if most ownership projections had Ladd McConkey much higher, essentially he was getting 5 guys under. Like Herbert was just never getting to over 5%. Kamara, no chance with all the running back plays. Even Gibbs, man, it was going to be close. But I mean, I didn't think even with the late steam he would cross 5. I think we talked about it yesterday on the show. What did we have here? We had him actually higher, so maybe that was the case. Let me just see here one other thing. Ladd, Kelsey for sure going to be lower, and then Houston. But yeah, I think that's kind of the key is you're building that in. And I just want to note that too, because that's another thing. If you go to SHIPIT Nation to Shiptimizer, and for members out there, you can go right in the build settings and use the bracketed ownership to make sure you're getting, 4 to 5 guys. When you use our presets, you're getting a guaranteed certain amount of 1 to 7 guys underneath, but you're getting at least 3 under 10%. So using these settings with bracketed ownership are a key way to get the job done. So more on that in the future, but I'll keep it here so I don't know how much he would want to discuss that. But Nickelback for life, really good dude. Congrats to him. Just awesome lineup. Like you said, the Herbert, Ladd McConkey, Alvin Kamara with the 3-man. After that, just kind of filling it out with projections. Like I said, when it just fits in, Gibbs, Chase, I get it. Like Tillman and Otton were the good chalk plays. Kelsey going to the 2 tight end versus the 3 running back, which was very popular. Going to the Houston D to get some leverage there, just a different spot. So yeah, great lineup overall. Let's go to Hishbu, another great player.
One more thing on the Kelsey flex, right? Who else was 6K in the afternoon window, right? Javonte Williams.
Yeah.
So that's just another leverage situation right there, right? Javonte, Brock Bowers, a lot of guys right there, right? So
yeah, definitely over the Javonte spot, using him and not having the money to get to Hunt or anything like that, and just avoiding the 3 running back. Certainly another way to get different. Hishbu also had a Justin Herbert lineup, but a little bit different. I want to talk about this one because the setup was kind of unique, but had Herbert, McConkey, Dobbins, no run back, Gibbs, Achane. So got a piece of that game that we talked about. No Tyreek, so let's play Achane. Just has the money to fit Chase. We already had that deep conversation. Chalk, that's fine. Got to put some of that in there. And then even the chalk defense. But still, 1, 2, 3 guys under 5%. So plenty of leverage. And then after that, kind of got away with it. But again, still 6th place, not first. So obviously not all the way there. But thoughts on this one, Nades? Anything different that you see? I really like this setup of this build as well.
Yeah, I really like this setup because he's going in Herbert, right? Who's, underpriced for what his talent could be against a bad defense for passing, right? But you're saying Herbert and McConkey get it done through the air, and then Dobbins also be involved, right, in the passing game. But then, hey, they get you down there. Dobbins runs it in. It's also a different way to play a chalkier Dobbins, who came in probably under what he was projected at. I know he was projected to be pretty popular at 6,900 there. So just a different way to play Dobbins, and then you kind of just fill it out. But not only that, going up to Achane instead of Javonte Williams, right, who you could have dropped down to and paired with the Denver D. I just think overall it's a great build, and a lot of the same points that I mentioned with the other Herbert stack. But I think pairing Dobbins, so many people are too scared or are scared to pair running backs, right, with their stack. Obviously, it doesn't work with every team, but in Shiptimizer, we also have that setting. You can go by team, right, to allow running backs into your stack. With a guy like Dobbins in a situation like that, when your quarterback is 5,400, I think it does make some sense, and it's a different way to play J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, one of the things, again, if you remember or not, just to show how this optimizer is built out to give you a chance to ship. Like we talk about, the optimizer designed to help you ship, hence the name Shiptimizer. You can turn this off, this setting. It's under team stacks, go here, turn off running backs, and just make it so you say, okay, I can see Kyler and Connor getting there. If you like Cousins and Bijan, I can see that. I didn't want any Lamar and Derrick Henry yesterday, so I just turned that off. I explained that on the show. Neither got there, by the way, but I mean, just to me, it wasn't a good play. So to each their own. This is another spot if you don't like, usually, again, I think it kind of got there a little bit yesterday, but usually it's James Cook stealing from Josh Allen or Josh Allen stealing from him. The same thing would go when you get down to Philly. Maybe you leave that turned off. It's going to be yesterday with Hurts getting 3 of them, or Barkley having his big day like the week before. But you can turn on the ones that you're comfortable with once you've got your stack set up and everything there, and do it that way. You can also show who you want to be your naked quarterbacks. If you were like, look, you said, yeah, Bo Nix, definitely going to be fine with having him as a naked quarterback yesterday because of the setup. That's fine. Roll with him. Maybe Lamar, you turn on as well. Certain ones like that. So little things that you can do inside Shiptimizer to make it happen. But yeah, this lineup, certainly another good one. I think 2 things I want to talk about quick. Rants was one. Whatever you won, if it only had 500K, that makes perfect sense. If you take $1 million down to 500, you space this out a little bit. Right now, 6th is 10K. You got it for 8th, but it's 7 and $1 million up top. So the math is still saying the same. Super top heavy, as we know. And then Sixburg won. I wouldn't take anybody on your never again list. I know people exaggerate this, and maybe you're joking or whatever, but some out there probably think like this. It's probably the worst thing that you can do. Flop lag is a real thing. Look at the never again lad McConkeys from the 2-game slate when he was like 60%, and then he comes back, and that's actually what made his ownership projection. We thought it would still stay high. It ended up going lower than it was. That's just an example. But Javonte Williams had McLaughlin score. He had Bo Nix takeaway touchdowns. He had opportunities. It just didn't happen. And it happens all the time, Nades, too. Another thing, I'm always a realist about this. As much as I get tilted about certain things, too, a lot of guys get their chance, man. They get it. Like, they give him their shot. Hunt gets a shot. He doesn't jam it in. You have one job. You jam it in. And if you don't be surprised if the next man up is taking it from you. So you got to look at it.
I have another add on that, too. So if I told you going into the slate against Carolina's defense, Javonte Williams was guaranteed 17 touches and 5+ targets through the air, you would have played him 100%. He got 17 touches. He got 5 targets yesterday against Carolina's defense. So it's not, the results, did he get there? Absolutely not. But did he have the opportunities in a smash spot? Absolutely, hence the ownership. So it was still a good play. And sometimes, hey, that's the nature of the game we play, right? Good plays don't always get there. If they did, everybody would have a much better chance to win every week, right? So he had the opportunities. If you guaranteed me 15+ touches and 5+ targets through the air, I would have probably locked in Javonte Williams yesterday, to be honest, at 6K.
Yeah, how many people were, never again Josh Jacobs because of the stuff with him recently, right? For that, how many people, were, let's say, Jalen Hurts? I'm not paying up for quarterback anymore. It looks like it's all Barkley now. I'm never going to use Jalen Hurts again. You just don't need expensive quarterbacks. I talk about it all the time. It's possible, but got to pick your
Ridley chalk week 2 weeks ago, right? 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, chalk Calvin Ridley week. Never again Calvin Ridley, right? So it's just like, if you have those, I get the reasoning, right? Yeah, is it tilting to lose money on a play who was projected to be amazing, right, and absolutely go out there and smash for 30 points? Yeah, it's very tilting, right? I didn't win a single dime yesterday in main slate, but it's not. I still had thought and processed into all my lineups. I liked where I went. I built them accordingly, and it just didn't work out, right? So just rephrasing that kind of mindset is just that's the point of the show to help create a better process, right?
Yeah, it's like our guy. I'll bring Shalou back up in a second. Can't say never, but shout out to our guy Steven Neighbors in the gear. My man is going out today. I think Hoop's getting it done. So congrats to you on winning the new gear from SHIPIT Nation. But he said needs some serious reflection. That's really what this is all about. There's no real rhyme or reason. We have a bit of a structure to how we do the show. You guys can always leave a comment after it's done or whatever. I know we do this live, but you can leave a comment if there's other stuff you want us to talk about and see. Have some more big news coming soon on stuff we're working on. But just to note, that's the whole point. It's all, we're just here to reflect. And then Shalou bringing him back up. He kind of had my week yesterday. I know Shalou, you were posting in the Discord about, I always love when you post there your feedback. You're serious about it. And even when you're tilting, it's funny. But he had like a chance in the Millie Maker, a realistic shot, and just, one guy here, one guy there, which on main slates is tougher to say than on Showdown. In Showdown, a lot of people have, if I just did this one swap, you're good. Like, that's easy because it's not easy. It's just, I'm saying it's a 1-game slate. You're always going to have 1v1s and 2v2s and if this and then that. On main slates, especially a 13-gamer, I think he was one swap away, like a 1v1 at flex where he could have done something and it would have given him a realistic shot at the top. But yeah, we just had this discussion, and it's just a prime example of what we talk about. It's a business. It's a sport. It's a business. It's a game. They have their opportunity. They get a crack at it. The only people that get away with sucking and making mistakes a lot and get to come back out and do it the next week in the NFL is coaches. So lots of coaches, they're guaranteed contracts. They get to make a lot of mistakes and even worse mistakes and somehow still have a job when they wake up on Monday. But as far as the players go, a lot of the times it is, hey, here's your shot. Your job is to jam it in. I don't care if the defense knows. You know that. You know that they know that they know. One of those situations, your job is still to score the touchdown. That's what you're paid to do. If you don't do it, you might not get a shot the next time, but we got a good look at it yesterday with a lot of these running backs. Going back, just one other thing, the Mega Millie yesterday, I want to give a shout out to our guy, Tom Brady is Gray. Excellent player. We talk about him all the time, but he's also a member over at SHIPIT Nation, and he sent a message very early in the morning to the Discord. I love this one. People were going back to it and bringing it back up later in the day. He said, just a heads up, this slate is going to hurt. And sure enough, it did. There was a lot of situational stuff, the Breece Hall, the Tyreek Hill, all that stuff that did not work out. The slate did hurt, but he found a way to make a little bit of money here. I'm not sure how he did overall in his day, with the stakes that he plays and whatnot, but still had a nice run at it with this lineup. So I'll start with this one and we'll move up the board. My boy, Fantasin, back in the mix, almost another milli maker. And then we'll talk about Alex 2001 about his winning lineup. But let's talk about this one first. Our guy, Tom Brady is Gray. He said the slate would hurt Nades, but this is the lineup he came up with that I saw did the best. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I like the setup, right? The Tua, Achane, Tyreek, right? A lot of people were playing Achane and Tyreek together just as the combo pack, which I thought was also, which was good, but just adding Tua on there, right, who was a pivot off of Caleb Williams, right, who was projected to be pretty popular in that range at 6K, right? Also Kirk Cousins, right, Kyler Murray. I think that adding Tua into the stack, who obviously these stakes, these ownerships are inflated, right? Because it's 634 entries versus a large field. And obviously some of the sharpest players in the world, right? Playing the megas. So I think that was good. The J.K. Dobbins Chargers defense, I know that was a good combo. And I like that pairing more for a tournament size like this versus the large field with the projected ownership it was coming in at. And then just building the good plays around it. Another combo pack here, Campbell, that we talk about all the time, right? The Cedric Tillman and Njoku, right? Just combo packing those two guys together for cheaper than what Jamar Chase was, right? Jamar Chase was 8,500. Cedric Tillman, Njoku, 8,400, right? For the combo pack. And they literally have nobody there. Jameis Winston is just going to chuck the ball. So I thought that was a pretty sharp move there. But yeah, overall, I mean, a good build for sure. Didn't get all the way there, but hopefully he still had a pretty good Sunday.
Yeah, something else to think about as you go throughout the season with these division matchups and your second matchups up. They can go one. Obviously, it's a 50-50 coin flip. They can go over or under, but sometimes they do focus more on whoever got them the first time and say, all right, let's shut them down and try and switch this plan up. Let's not let that happen again, and let's try not to let anything happen and win the game, but let's at least focus on that. So I certainly think that was something. But yeah, this lineup, like you said, this is just the product of the slate yesterday too. Like it wasn't super exciting to pay up to the other running backs. These mid-tiers felt really good. It wasn't super exciting to pay up. Maybe your Hurts and Lamar one's fine, but it wasn't super exciting to pay up there. You already had Tyreek kind of at that max price you were going up to, so you just had the money for Jamar Chase. So I can't labor on it too much. I just think that's, it is what it is. That's what happens. But it was why he was also up there in a lot of these lineups this week, because the way it's set up and with how much these cheap tight ends just continue to crush, because they're basically wide receiver 1 or 2s, maybe even give them 2s if you want because of the setup. But, they're still on there and getting a ton of targets in that offense. But overall, the 3-man stack, don't need to run it back. Defense with the running back paired up. The combo pack from Cleveland, just hope they get the passes and not necessarily need Winston, or if Winston's picks hurt him over a guy like Tua going off to Achane and Tyreek is what you're hoping for, you're good. And then you just got the money for Jamar. So can't fault it. Great lineup. I think wonderful setup there. Here's a Jameis one. My boy Fantasin had a Herbert and a Winston. His Winston build was an overstack. So Winston, Judy, Tillman, Njoku, not worrying about the Baltimore side, going double tight end with Kelsey, Denver D, no, and used all the money, by the way, no Javonte, and then Mixon and Bijan. I thought this was a nice lineup here. Obviously didn't get fully to the top, but again, just another way to get different with those guys is to just completely overstack them and then get to the different running backs that, while Mixon is 16, it's not the same as what we just saw with Dobbins, Javonte Williams, Breece Hall, all those guys going through the roof, and then not a 3 running back build. Nate, thoughts on this first one?
Yeah, I mean, the overstack there, I mean, just significantly underpriced, right? You know, you're number one, you're attacking the Ravens' horrible secondary, right? Who's also dealing with injuries. And they're significantly underpriced. I mean, Judy is wide receiver 1 at sub 5K. Tillman, wide receiver 2, sub 5K. Njoku, right? Arguably wide receiver 2 as well at 5,100. So just the overstack there, the pricing makes it work, and then just plugging in the good plays around it. But obviously still having some leverage in game theory built in, right? With the Bijan Robinson pivot off of Breece Hall, right? I mean, I'm sure Breece Hall in this tournament was probably, I mean, I would assume pushing 35-40%, right? Kind of where Tyreek Hill landed, I would assume. So just having that 1 or 2 differentiation pieces, right? With the Travis Kelce pivot off of Javonte Williams, because I'm sure with the Denver defense in this lineup, he had Javonte Williams in the flex, realized that he probably looked at the leaderboard and looked at guys around him and realized, hey, I need to make a swap here to really give myself a chance at first place. So let me swap to a guy like Travis Kelce.
Yeah, Breece Hall was 45% owned, HN 32. Good call on that swap as well. Like if you look at it from that perspective, where was the
you actually that was JoJo's or Jogo 279's lineup right below Fantasy.
Oh, that was my bad. So then we reviewed another one, but one thing I was going to say about this one, I'll go to my guy in a second here, but the other thing too about Bijan, not only is he the $100 pivot off Breece Hall, like you said, but most Bijan lineups were probably with the cheap Tampa Bay stacks, like where people were overstacking Baker with, you'd get McMillan, you'd get Shepard or Palmer, and you'd get Otton in there and have Bijan. He went with the cheap Cleveland guys and Winston as opposed.
There's another one built into that too, right? Drake London was also 7,200 on that same team, and Devin Achane, right? So the Bijan Tyreek, obviously it's not a direct swap, but Bijan on the same team, right? Drake London, I'm sure, was pretty chalky in this tournament. He was projected to be pretty chalky, came in pretty chalky on the large field stuff. Going to Bijan in that same team at the same price is another sharp move, I think.
Yeah, and someone said that, ballsy swap, but I agree, scared money, but you're dead. There's no way he's getting to 40K. Very unlikely, I should say, even if Javonte has the day you're looking for, because what would have happened and what you're not seeing here is 25 to whatever Javonte even got, 9 or something. Like, what did he get on the day? I can't even remember. I think it was very low.
Javonte
9.2. So what you're not seeing is all the dudes that he leapfrogged. He could have been blocked by like 30 guys in this spot, 40 guys. And so this swap is almost necessary if you want to give yourself some upside or some ability to move up the leaderboard versus, when it's just that busy of a pairing. I'll always say this: if you're way down here, going into the afternoon and you're in the 200 spot or something, it's hard to tell. So sometimes people just say, I'll just leave it and take as much money as I can get. But others will say, it's not going to be a difference of that much. Not to mention, I think Kelce is pretty close and I'm going to get him at way lower owned. I'll just take the risk. That's what actually leapfrogged him to even give him a shot to get into this kind of money. So certainly,
not to mention too, he also know he's behind the Jamar Chase teams, right? Because Jamar Chase outscored Tyreek Hill and his other receivers, right? So with the value, he knew he was already chasing the Jamar Chase team.
He had nowhere else to go, though, is what I'm saying. He had no afternoon guys except that most popular pairing. If I was wagering, I would almost, guarantee you this was a swap because it would have just been so far dead, just sitting on Javonte and Denver. Now instead he swapped himself into 40K, which no Kelce. I mean, let's be realistic. No Kelce in this one is another 10K. Does Kelce get you, pretty big day at 25 points. Does he get you up to another 7 points? Maybe not, but just to tap out in 5th would have been another 10K. That's a 50K swap versus a min cash. So if that, down there. So love to see stuff like that. Going to Fantasyn's lineup, it was Winston, Judy, Njoku. He had the HN with Waddle, no Tyreek, used Jamar Chase, Detroit D with Gibbs. This is the setup I was talking about earlier. And the point I was going to bring up when I said I love his lineup was the Gibbs and Detroit one. just to kick things off, right? No Broncos, Knicks, no Javonte Williams, no $3,700 defense. You switch it up a little bit and go to a lineup that looks like this. Thoughts on this one, Nades?
Yeah, I think this is a really good setup. He also did playing Judy instead of the Tillmans. I think is another way, just spending up a little bit more on the same stack. I think just getting off the chalky Tillman or Elijah Moore talks came in late too at those value guys. Also, so I think that was a good build. And just playing the Waddle. Another way to get off the Tyreek Hill, right? Tyreek Hill, almost 50% owned, right, in this contest. Going to Waddle there, I think that's a great build. But yeah, I really like the Jahmyr Gibbs Detroit defense pairing. They had the highest team total on the slate. They're still facing Mason Rudolph, right? They still have a good defense. And Jahmyr Gibbs, I heard a stat yesterday on Red Zone that Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery played something like 16 games together now, I think, or 19 games. And Montgomery has 16 touchdowns or 18 touchdowns, and Gibbs has 16 touchdowns, right? So they're just obviously heavily involved, and he's super explosive. So plus all the pivots off of the Breece Halls in that range. So I think that's a super sharp build for sure. Yeah,
it sucks. Ladd McConkey for the win. Tillman for the win. I mean, you're not going to leave that much salary probably, but you could also have a Ladd McConkey for Judy and then bring the defense down a little bit and do it that way and still have Njoku with Jameis. But yeah, it's just the way you build. That's fine. His other lineup was a Herbert, McConkey, Dobbins. That's why I brought it up. If he had just instead of Waddle, McConkey wins the millie again. But it's Herbert, McConkey, Dobbins, no run back, Mixon, New England D. Again, one thing I'll notice is he's still putting his leverage pieces in here, even for the higher stakes in a smaller field. You can get away with more in a smaller field, but if you notice, he does have 3 guys under 10% in a lot here. And obviously, I like doing these deep dives and stuff, and I'll spend more time on this in the future. But Jameis came in over, so this one's a little bit more chalky. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, more leverage in there. 1, 2, 3, 4. More leverage in there. And notice his plays that are lower owned, like Trevor Lawrence, who we talked about already. Right. With a Brian Thomas. This is a great stack. And Amon-Ra St. Brown at 4%. These leverage plays are real dudes. It's a Kirk Cousins, London, Mooney, Pitts stack with the Otton run back, the one that we talked about. I love this lineup. It just didn't work out. But this lineup has tons of leverage built in, still projects really well, I'm sure, going in. And he just didn't get there from some of these options. But yeah, that build's nice. So just little things to look at when you're doing the deep dive. Anything else you have on this Herbert lineup? Then we'll look at the winner, do the reviews before we get out of here.
No, overall good setup. The combo pack, right, with McMillan and Otton. You can get away with it in a field like that because he clearly has some setup in his optimizer or his setup that he's using to have at least one. It seems to be sub 5% up to 5, 6 guys, I would assume. So he already knows he can play good plays around that when he's setting up his lineups to have those leverage plays.
Let's see, Kenny. Kenny says, y'all are fine to look at my fishy lineup in there if you want to. Obviously, we reviewed Kenny in the past, plays a lot of the high stakes. I know he had a decent day, not the day that he was looking for, but a lot of stuff failed. Lamar, a really bad outcome for what could have been a lot more. I love this setup of the Judy Tillman combo pack with just Lamar not figuring out, Zay, is he healthy? Bateman is the backup. Aguilar, likely or Andrews week. We never know anymore. It's because Andrews back in the mix now, so it's a spin of the roulette wheel there. Henry, all this other stuff. But if you're not playing Henry, going up to him. Breece Hall, fine. Ottenchok, fine. The double combo. I mean, I don't know what you were thinking, not pivoting here on Javonte, but I know you don't late swap very much. You're the prime example of the guy we just talked about. So how many more points do we get from Kelsey? Let's look this up real quick. Do a quick exercise to make Kenny feel real bad. Kelsey gets you 25. Let's give him 15 more points. Goes to 176? Hishbu, 20 grand, Kenny, 20 grand. That's it. Need a swap. And whoever else it was, he said I could have went to Swift with $200 left. What did Swift get on the day?
Swift got 21.9.
So he gets 10 more. He goes up to 171. It's at least it's not the end of the world. It's another, a little bit of chunk change. But yeah, overall, the lineup was fine. I just think for this lineup was just, I know you're just throwing it in there because it's, obviously not, it's not the result you wanted, but you did still have leverage pieces. Like you had Judy, you had Lamar. Most people didn't have Lamar. You know, it got really chalky after that. I mean, a lot of 50, 40s, 45s, 32s, 33s. Again, not who you play. It's how you play them. But even in like my guy, Fantasin, let me go back and look. Where was his lineup that kind of didn't have leverage I was going to bring up? I think it was this one. No, maybe it was this one. This one here. So this is an example, too, Nades, just real quick, and then we'll get the last 10 minutes on lineup reviews that we got there. You're saying, oh, but he only put one guy in that's around 5%, but notice it has none of the 40 or 50% guys, right? So 12% in this big of a field is up there, but it's not 40 or 50. The 19s and 20s are against the 45 Breece Halls and the 35 Javonte Williams. You do still have a 5%er in there. Yes, you have 22 in Njoku, but you don't have the big Otten number. Yes, you have Waddle at 16, but you don't have the Tyreek number. So just something to keep in mind that even in these higher stakes, smaller fields, even when you aren't putting the full leverage in, like he is in the other ones, 1, 8, 3, 5, 5, 1, even when he's not putting it in there, he is still getting off of the super popular builds and the super popular plays. So that was the final thought there. And let's go to the winner real quick, Nades. Bo Nix, Joe Mix, double Mix and Nix into his lineups to get the milli. But thoughts on this one here? This is Alex20001. Got the job done in the big mega.
Yeah, I think overall good build. And I mean, he could have blew out the field too had A.J. Brown done what A.J. Brown usually does. I know you were on A.J. Brown a lot. And I mean, pivot right there off of Jamar Chase in the same game. I think that's pretty sharp. He knew Jamar Chase was going to be much more popular in this contest than in A.J. Brown. He saved $300, probably upgraded him somewhere. I would assume the defense, right? Baltimore defense from maybe the Chargers defense, something like that. Could have been the swap there. So overall, I think this is a really good build. The Achane Jalen Waddle, I think, was obviously a pretty sharp combo. We've seen that quite a bit in this field when we were reviewing the megas here, because you knew Tyreek Hill was the common pairing with Achane, right, in that combo pack. The Bo Nix naked thing, right? We already hit on that. I'm surprised Bo Nix came in at 5% in this contest. That's pretty surprising. Because I think he came in much higher in the lower stake stuff. Bo Nix did. So I think that's an interesting thing. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, right? The lower stake stuff, Bo Nix was much higher owned than obviously the higher stakes. Yeah,
one thing I'll note real quick to see, this was all morning guys, right? Except for Nix. Every single play was from the morning slate, I believe, right?
Yeah, so maybe
morning too, right? Yeah, everything was. So yeah, there was no swaps or anything. That's just what he went with, but no Javonte Williams. I think Shalou brought up a good point too. Like, I put too much trust in Williams and Bowers. I think Williams was fine. We had 5 games in the afternoon yesterday. So it's just more of knowing what you're going to do going in. Like Kenny said, I'm surprised. Him and I'll probably talk offline about it, but I mean, I thought he was thinking of swapping. I had a lineup with those 2 left that I swapped, and I had the exact money with 100 left over, I think it was, to get to Kareem Hunt and the Chiefs. And I was monitoring it up until 5:04, or it's my 4:04, I should say, 4:05 Eastern time start time, trying to see if my Lamar was going to pass the Jameis Winston. Otherwise, I knew I had to swap. I had his math figured out. He could always have blocked me knowing that I was going to swap if he thought that, but that's like the meta game that you play. But once I saw that game end, immediately I swapped to Hunt and Chiefs D just as a leg up, because I had no more chance to win the FFWC seat with those 2 there. And so that's just a prime example of being able to swap it. He talked about having Swift, all that. You just have to know what you can swap to. And we had 5 games in the afternoon. There was a lot of swap options, but I said it on the front of the show yesterday, the start of it. Don't be sitting there in the afternoon with your Javonte Williams Broncos lineup, sitting dead on them if that's what you got, because everyone has that combo. I thought it was a great combo to have going in and to hopefully block with, but not one that I would have wanted left over beyond that. So let's move on. Let's go to these lineup reviews for the people, Nades. And if we got to spend a little bit of extra time, we will. Newens, I'm always on his case. He was one of the first in here. I'll stay on your case, my friend. You're my boy. Always love, but I don't like this build. Mainly because the slate at hand yesterday and double running back of Mostert and Achane. Again, you guys know we're not results oriented. It actually worked out. It was a nice little combo pack. Crushed Breece Hall. I just don't like it for the slate that was at hand. Like, I just didn't think that's how I would want to go about it. You had like 15 good running back plays, and Mostert wasn't one of them. If anything, I would have rathered the old Sean Tucker to Achane like the Sean Tucker to Bucky that week or whatever it was, to try and get leverage that way and do it. But I get it, and it was fine. It scored okay. Everything's good. I'm just saying I didn't like it for the slate at hand. Nades, I'll kick it to you, and you can talk through the rest of the lineup. But obviously, I like the Jackson, Tillman, Moore. That's kind of the combo pack thing we've talked about. The Reed, Ingram, that's fine. The Indy spot, good. The Baltimore D with Lamar against them, like that was the other weird one, but it's fine. It can still get there against Jameis. I even talked about it. It's a possibility always. But go ahead, talk about this.
I'll just add another thing. You already know, like going in, right? You have Mostert and Achane in the same build, so you already got a ton of leverage there from the position. You don't also need to double down and leverage it with an expensive Jonathan Taylor, right? It is another thing that I see.
Or just all guys under 10. Like no, again, it's fine and it's good the scores there, but like 1.9, 7.6, 2.4, 2.1, 6 point. I mean, you've got leverage points built in, but your lineup is naturally different right out of the gate with the double Miami.
Right. Yeah. 100%. So that's the only other thing. The rest of it, right? The secondary stack with Reed and Ingram. Obviously, I was on that game. Jordan Love getting hurt kind of put that game into Josh Jacobs' hands for the most part, right? So obviously that hurt the passing game, sped up the passing game on the other side. It just wasn't Ingram that was involved in National Tight End Day. And another take on that, right? Because I see Shalhoub say it in the chat too, right? Bowers was in for a big game. Anybody can say what they want. Offensive coordinators 1,000% yesterday knew it was National Tight End Day. Like you had Adam Troutman getting touchdowns. You had literally backup tight ends literally getting touchdowns all over. I mean,
I told you.
You can make all you want, and people were saying, oh, they don't care about this. They don't know about this. They clearly know about it when George Kittle, one of the best tight ends in the league, it's literally his day, and he's literally open in public about it, right? So I think that was just another – Didn't
get there, to Shalhoub's point. Bowers obviously hurt people's feelings. Jacoby Myers being back was certainly interesting for that. We'll have to keep a note on that just for next time, just bookmark it. But let's keep rolling with these lineup reviews. Go from new ones over to K. Stevens here. 171.26. Did the Tua, Achane, Tyreek. I like that quite a bit, so that could be a way that it could get there. Had Mixon as a piece of that Houston offense in a good spot. Had London, who I preferred London if you weren't doing like Chase or, again, I know people just had the money to get to him, but I still prefer, I think London can get you 8 for 101 and not be required. Obviously, Mooney and Pitts stole a bunch of his lunch, but I'm just saying you could definitely play Drake London and not need a quarterback at all. So I thought that was a great one-off spot there in a secondary stack, but just as using one piece from the Atlanta side, the secondary of Otton, London, I like that. And then Swift and the Chicago D. Another note, I made this on the show. I didn't like Chicago D as much with Jaden Daniels starting. Right. Sort of something we were keeping an eye on. Again, why you want to watch till the end, leading up to the slate. We wanted Bears D versus Mariota, in my opinion. I thought with Daniels coming back, people say, oh, but his ribs and all that. His ribs, to me, are fine, or he's not coming back. He actually, he was fine the day it happened. It just was made into a bigger deal. There was no real note of any injury whatsoever to his ribs. It was a complete scare. And almost like David Montgomery, a bone bruise, a bruise for an NFL running back that gets smashed by 280-pound dudes every week. It's a bruise. He's going to come back and be just fine. David Montgomery, just fine yesterday. But I like this build, Nades, overall from a construction situation. But, some of the stuff that stands out is some of the results could have been looked at in different ways, like maybe not Swift and Bears as much with Daniels coming back. Each their own, but it's nothing wrong with it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I think it was a good build. He was kind of locked in going into the afternoon with Swift and Bears. I mean, there really wasn't a swap there, to be honest, from a defensive standpoint. So I don't mind that. Obviously, you didn't get the Jalen Daniels news until after the morning was already locked. So he's pretty locked into that. But the rest of the build, I like a ton. I like the setup a lot. I agree with the London play there. I know people were saying Mooney, but I like Mooney more attached to Kirk Cousins because it's like usually the home run balls, right? Whereas Drake London's kind of the possession guy, the Zay Flowers, if you will. So I liked London a lot by himself. So.
Yeah, I want to see if I can fit a few more of these in. So they'll go a little quicker on these. Maybe I'll just do one. You could do one. I'm going to take the winner first. Shout out to Apaku from the big guy. Won the listener league with this and says, thoughts on playing Achane and Tyreek together okay, given their discounted price points? I think for the combo, I think it was okay. Worked out okay for you. You shipped the whole tournament. So certainly was okay, though. Yesterday we talked about with those prices was definitely fine. I have a knock against it that I'm going to talk about in a different lineup. in a second, but for different reasons. But I like how you put this one together. Lamar, Zay, Andrews, Tillman. Use the 2 Miami guys. Hope that they're the whole offense. Get the second tight end in regardless of ownership because it's fine. And then I love the Detroit combo, really focusing on those good game environments that we talked about. Like if the Baltimore game goes off, you got the nice pieces there. Get the Tampa Bay $3,500 guy in because you can with how different the rest of the lineup is. Gibbs and Detroit as part of that spot, avoiding the Denver guys, avoiding some of the other stuff there with the Chargers guys and doing it that way. And also, this was an early only lineup, right? Was the Detroit game in the morning?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so really you probably would have crushed in early only slates as well. So one takeaway is that if you ever see your lineup that is a all early only or an all PM only, don't be afraid to play those slates with it because this lineup probably would have worked out pretty well on the morning slate as well. And the price is set up similar or usually exactly the same. So any quick thoughts on this one, Age? I just think that's a awesome build. It worked out and it got to the top. No secret there.
Very good build. Just the parlay thing, right? Going in on 3 spots, right? You need 3 spots to get right or 4 spots, right, with the Otten. But overall, amazing build. Otten was just a onesie position, right? Just the best play on the slate yesterday for sure.
I want to add that too. I love what you said. It is, to me, it's 3 spots. It's almost like Otten's the free square, where I always say about the D, does it mean he'll put you up to 29 that you need to win? No. But if it's just you're landing on literally one of the best values on the slate and everything else is, okay, Detroit smashes and it's Gibbs in the D. Lamar and Cleveland goes off and it's Lamar, Zay, Andrews. They got to bring back Tillman the other way. And Miami does their job with Tua back, those guys that pick up the offensive weapon, the offensive numbers when Tua's in. Achane, Hill, boom. You needed 3 things to happen, and then the best value play just needs to hit. But it's not like this.
But he could have went to Trey Palmer there too, which people were going to too, and it wouldn't have got the job done, right? So
little things like that, though, I do like to look at. I will bring up the aforementioned version that I didn't like. So Rune Man, Schwank Bob, really, really good dude, always supporting. We appreciate it. And I don't think your lineup's bad. I'm just saying I want to note something about this. Playing them together I thought was fine. I understand the game stack here of Murray, Harrison, McBride, Achane that we literally showed on the stone at the start of the show. And I like Gibbs, as we've just talked about. But what I don't like about this lineup is that you doubled down on it, which forced you to have to double down on the cheap spots, right? It's not bad because it very simply could have been that you go to Otten here for $200 more and drop the Broncos down. I didn't calculate your whole lineup, but you would have fit pretty good. Got yourself 28 plus more points. Maybe you lose or make a little bit more on the defense and been closer to 200. But I don't like that it forces you to need 2 cheapies to get there. And if you do force it to need 2 cheapies to get there, when you already have, should note it here, back to our winner, 5, 3, 3, 3, 2. Lots of leverage still put into that parlay. When you got a parlay like this and you've already got 1, 4, less than 1, 2, you're fine. You could have just played Otten and dropped the D down and just not tried to overdo it, needing Tillman and Bobo to get there. It's not results oriented. I'm talking about the overall construction and my thought process behind it. The result oriented is how you would have got the better score and the better number. The build, though, I'm saying when you overextended yourself like this to need 2 cheapies to go off, look at the leverage of what you've already got in there and be fine just putting the other value cheapie who probably had a floor of 6 to 7 points. And we saw his ceiling, 29. So I wouldn't be trying to make Jake Bobo work here in this spot, regardless of Metcalf in or out. You already had enough leverage. You were already over the top with everything that you needed. Go ahead, Nades. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I agree. Your points you brought up are great. Jake Bobo is pretty thin play unless you're stacking up like a Geno attached. So that's like one of those plays, right, where value plays are okay in regards to how you use them, right? There's some great value plays that don't need their quarterback to come with. And then there's guys like Jake Bobo who are probably going to get 4 targets max. And if he has a big day, it's likely that Geno also has a big day attached to him. And obviously you're going to pick up on things like that. The more you play, the more you listen and kind of watch these shows and that. But I've played a long time. I've listened to Tambo a lot and learned a lot that I kind of just know the guys that need to be attached to the quarterback. So that's the only other ad.
Yeah, this one here was from our guy Beetlebane. Obviously, a great player. We've seen him, had a huge showdown win late last season and now getting back into it this season. Said this was his best from the day. But Winston, it's on 2 screenshots. I'll go here. But it's Winston, Tillman, and Njoku. Bateman with the run back. Then he's got Brown and Chase Achan, Bears D with Swift. So, it's a 3-1, Swift, Bears D, Achan with no Tyreek, Chase, and Brown. And it just fits the mold of what we talked about on the slate. You had sort of unlimited money. I think everything is set up fine. It's just you need it all to happen. And then the other thing is if Chase actually does break it, is it on a Winston lineup like this? Tough to say because Bateman would have still crossed you out. If Brown busts it and is part of that stack with Jalen Hurts, who already was having a big day himself, is a Winston lineup up there. But again, you had unlimited money, so I'm not faulting you for it. And I also don't mind that you split the difference of if I'm not going to have Tyreek, I'm going to go to Achan. If I'm not going to have Tyreek, I'm going to get both the other stud wide receivers, build a little bit differently, and set yourself up to have an expensive wide receiver in the flex as opposed to a 3 running back day. But Nate, any thoughts on this lineup for our guy Beetlebane?
Yeah, no, I think the setup was good. The Bateman was a pretty good play. Obviously, he didn't get there, but you kind of got forced into playing a Bateman, right, in a build like this instead of going to like a Mark Andrews or something. So you could have looked at that, right, going to like one of those tight ends and playing double tight end and still playing your 2 stud receivers. But yeah, overall, I think it was a good build. And just the double stud wide receiver, I think was definitely interesting on yesterday, but it's hard to imagine an 8,500 receiver and an 8,300 receiver both getting there without kind of one of their quarterbacks, in my opinion. But I mean, playing Winston obviously allowed you to play both of them.
That's why I don't mind because the way the build was flipped, I actually think it's fine. I'm saying like that's the tricky about yesterday's slate is you almost always had money to spend. Here's another one. We'll round out on this one. Uncle TK 71, Todd Kyle put it up there, rocking the SHIPIT Nation logo. But Winston, Moore, Njoku, no run back. That's fine. Double stud again with no Tyreek and going to Achan. He went with Amon-Ra St. Brown as a piece of that Detroit offense. A.J. Brown as a piece of the Philly offense with no Hurts. The double tight end is fine. Obviously a good value play there. Already had tons of leverage built in. Again, this is what I was talking about earlier with our guy Schwank Bob. But Winston, Amon-Ra, A.J. Brown, Elijah Moore. You already got 4 leverage points. You can just play K-Dot and then got the secondary of Williams and Broncos.
The only thing I want to add on that, though, is I would have probably swapped here, to be honest, because you already knew Amon-Ra St. Brown busted for you and A.J. Brown busted for you in the morning at those price points that you're just zero chance to get anywhere near a big cash day. Obviously, it hit the cash, right? But you're never getting anywhere near the top of a line tournament when you have Amon-Ra and A.J. Brown both bust at those price points, and those were both morning guys. So swapping to Kareem Hunt, who obviously didn't crush, and like the Chiefs defense, or punting the defense to like the Seahawks or something, and then going up to one of the running backs, or James Cook, right, Bills, something like that. Just looking at those swaps. So I don't know what your portfolio looks like in terms of the number of lineups you played, but just always remembering that. And not everybody swaps. There's obviously goods and bads of swaps, but when you have a situation and a setup like this is something you would look at when you already know you have 2 expensive guys that have snowflakes. You're pretty tough to get there when you got 50+% combined ownership between your last 2 spots, right?
Yeah, like that's the thing. I said it before. Javonte and the Broncos was the James Cook and Chicago Bears defense. You pick up 21 points over here, you lose 4 here for a difference of 17. You're now up to what, 172? So it's like, again, is that going to make you all the money in the world? Not necessarily. But the point is, looking for these things when you're pretty much dead to rights with the same thing everybody else. It's like the most owned guy on your lineup besides Otten and the top owned defense on the slate, maybe. Like maybe Ravens were a little bit higher, but the point is you were dead to a min cash, and not saying you would have got a bunch more out of it, but it would have been good practice to realize when to late swap and when to learn from it. So, I think that's sort of a good way to shake it down and break it all out. Obviously, if you guys want to join the nation and get more on some of the stuff we talked about, get the Stone tool that we went through. It's easy. Just go over to shipitnation.com, click the banner. The code is already built in. You can get full access to all access for $85. If I click it here and just show you guys, the $85 is usually $99 for the monthly. It's built in when you click that banner to get it for $85, and you get all the sports that we cover, projections, ownership, tools, rankings, all the core reports, player pools, slate plans, all the slate info, the education courses. If you're on a monthly like we're talking about, you do get the Discord community, and then you do get Shiptimizer for all the sports we cover. That's the $85 plan. If you don't want to get that right now, that's fine. I would say still go over. If you're watching this, you definitely want the education to learn more. And we've got more on that coming in the future. But Daily Fantasy Football Roadmap, put your email in, get the lesson. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for all the support. For Nades, for myself, ToeTagginTambo, let's ship it.